Hello, and welcome to our very first episode of the Unschooling Uncharted podcast with Heather May Young and Elsa Goldwasser, mother-daughter unschooling enthusiast duo. I'm Elsa, I'm the daughter, I'm 19 years old, and I've been unschooled my whole life.
I'm Heather May Young, and I am the mama of Elsa, and I am a somatic practitioner and director of True North, a self-directed learning community.
So today, in this very first conversation, we are going to be unpacking a little bit our thoughts behind why we called it Unschooling Uncharted and what that means to us and what that means for the conversations we'll be having in the future. Any first thoughts to start us off, Mama?
Well, so Unschooling Uncharted, we arrived at that name for this podcast because, well, it makes me think of going back over the years, actually, of unschooling with Elsa, how conversations were such a big part of what we have done together. I feel like it started when Elsa was 3 years old, and she would plop herself down on the couch in our living room in Portland, where we lived at the time, and say, "Talk to me, Mama." And so I learned right away from Elsa that she wanted to have conversations, and so that was always that's been part of our relationship for a long time. And in more recent years, I mean, I guess in the teenage years, I feel like we really got into this habit of having often morning conversations over breakfast. So our days would often start with these conversations over breakfast, and sometimes we would go on for quite a long time.
Oh, yeah.
and
We could get very involved.
Our breakfast conversations, yes. And so, that's where the seed for this podcast emerged, was really just out of our own enjoyment of our conversations, and really how central conversations are to unschooling as a lifestyle. So, and then, this idea of uncharted, I feel like the whole lifestyle that is the unschooling path has so much to do with being willing to explore the unknown and to be in the uncertain territories, where there aren't specific answers and there aren't specific guidelines coming to you pre-made from the culture about how you're supposed to do your learning, how you're supposed to do your life, that it's really an inner and an outer journey of discovery. And so the word uncharted really spoke to that part of that foundational aspect of unschooling.
Yeah, exactly. It's like sailing into the unknown of your life, which we're doing whether we're unschooling or not, and no matter how old we are. But when parents and families choose to take a unconventional path like this, it is choosing for going into uncharted territory, because it is not a curriculum, because it is not something set out for you to do. It's uncharted territory, and it's exciting, and it's something you have to be ready to trust to do also, which is just so fun. Just like you said, just the foundation of unschooling is trusting the unknown, really.
Yeah. And that makes me think of a lot of different things. See if I can pull on one thread. That, I forget whose quote that is. It says, that if you're following a path, then it's not yours because it's already been made.
Right.
So that life is a bit like following your own path is a bit like bushwhacking your way through.
Yeah.
Or
feels that way sometimes.
Sometimes more than others. Another metaphor that has been with me for many decades has been this idea of life by braille, that so often, we can't see what's ahead of us, but we can maybe feel a little bit. So, this idea of kind of feeling your way through life, life by braille has been a concept I've long been living into and trying to trust in that.
Yeah.
And life as an improvisation, that idea as well, that we can meet life with our preconceived ideas and try to make life shape up to those ideas, or we can meet life in a much more relational way and try and kind of interact with the creativity of the moment, of each moment as we meet it. And that improvisational approach is also very much at the root of unschooling. And again, back to that trust, because if you're living that way, it definitely feels like you're kind of always on that edge of the unknown. And so that requires so much trust. And actually, though, the cultivation of trust is one of the main reasons I feel like to do it, is because it does help us to develop a sense of
Yes.
trust in life, which
is so healthy.
I mean, I think it's one of the main points in life, is to develop our sense of trust in ourselves, in life, in each other, in love, in learning, and in just in all the ways that that trust informs us. So that's been a huge gift of the unschooling path for me as a mama in this duo. Just continually having to come back to a sense of trust when we're not relying on kind of established cultural structures to tell us that we're doing okay, but really feeling for ourselves, do we feel we're doing okay? Are we feeling that this is the right path for us? And just practicing that is I think it's the stuff of
It's
life.
It's one of the things that I feel I have. I mean, there are so many things I could go on about how much living the unschooled way has given me in life as I've grown older and have perspective. But one of the things is trusting myself and knowing that other paths, that, going to school is one of the things that it definitely does not help you with, is trusting yourself. It is almost, it teaches you the opposite a lot of the time. Don't listen to your body. You need to go to school at a certain time for a certain amount of time to sit still in a chair. Don't listen to maybe your own interests. Yeah, like whatever you're into, that's not as important as algebra right now, and so you learn to put your trust with what other people think is right for you. And that can be problematic later on. It can lead to just all sorts of complications, which I think no matter what you do, you're going to come to moments in life where you question, which decision should I make? What should I follow my gut feeling, or should I follow what the logic in my head is telling me? But I think for me, having been raised as an unschooler, I have really just such a strong ground level of trust in my own ability to know what's right for myself. And that is priceless.
It is. As a somatic practitioner, so often that would be at the heart of what we would finally get to with, when I would be working with clients, is and we all work on this, of course, it's a lifelong journey, but that people would be struggling with having lived their whole life according to kind of an outside locus of control, that's where their reference point always was something on the outside. am I doing okay? Am I measuring up? Am I accomplishing enough? Am I a good person?
Mhm.
All of the, in referencing outside yourself constantly for that. And that has all kinds of emotional, mental, and physical repercussions. It's not that we don't need to reference outside of ourselves. That's part of living in a body, in a physical reality, that we do also reference outside of ourselves, but ideally not exclusively, and not at the expense of also referencing to our internal
Mhm.
locus of control. Um, and in our culture, it's just there's just been such an emphasis put on that, looking to the outer for our barometer of how things are going, that we need to return to make it just more in balance. We need to spend a lot more time establishing our internal sense of control, and agency, uh, just to bring it back into some kind of balance,
Yeah.
and that was often what I would be working on, with clients who would come in for somatic work, is how to feel connected to your own sense of of self, and your own needs, and um, you know and then trusting that enough to actually live from that place. And
Yes.
so I was working, for many years with, so for the last 20 years, working with clients largely on that. Often it would kind of boil down to that. And so what I saw was like, gosh, and all my clients were adults. And so, and some, I've worked with people from their 20s into their 80s, but the majority of my clients would often be a little bit older, like 40s, 50s, 60s. And and I just felt like, gosh, if we maybe lived within an environment that supported us staying connected to ourself from the beginning, we wouldn't have to, later in life, come back and do all this repair, and it's often very difficult, kind of process of finding our way back to ourselves, and kind of
Mhm.
remembering ourselves into wholeness. Um, that wholeness is always there, but we lose connection with it. And so what if we could establish cultures where we were supported in staying whole from the beginning, at least as much as we can. Life
Mhm.
life breaks us open in so many ways,
Yes. Well,
but so that's why, for me, going from, working in the somatic field, and then kind of turning my interest to developing a self-directed learning community, um, was a very natural extension of what I'd been doing already, because it was like just kind of going upstream from where I had been working with people, going to working with children and creating that culture, um,
mhm.
where we are supporting each other in remaining whole, and listening to our body and mind and heart and soul, and staying connected as much as we can, just putting that front and center in terms of what the value of the culture is, um, so that ideally, we're going to support people in not having to grow up and 40 years later, come back to to realizing what got disconnected, and then having to do all the work of
Yeah.
reconnection. So
And well, talking about the program that you've developed, that brings us also to a little bit of the inspiration for the name of our podcast, because the name of the program that you started is True North, which has, the whole idea of following your own true north, following your own internal compass, which is what all of this is about. And the kind of, the ideas that brings of, being out on the ocean and you're following your compass and going into uncharted territory where you don't know what's out there, but you know which direction is north. And so you're following that, and that is also the connection that we made with the name Unschooling Uncharted, and the feeling of currents in water, and how um you know everything's connected. There's currents coming from different parts of the world, and there's different bodies of water that we call different things, but everything's connected. And that is how life is, and that is what unschooling supports in learning and in life, is keeping everything connected, keeping yourself connected to your own sense of your own personal true north, keeping yourself connected to your sense of trust to be able to go out into those uncharted waters of life, and the way that everything just flows into each other in the way that life does. And so compartmentalization doesn't really help you out with that. It complicates things in many ways, I find. Maybe it gives the illusion of things being clearer, more black and white, easier to think about abstractly perhaps, but that really everything's connected, and that's just life. And so why create an illusion of separateness when that's not needed?
Yeah. And in the yogic philosophies, it's stated that that all dis-ease, so whether that's physical, mental, emotional, but all dis-ease is actually just a symptom of the illusion of separation.
Mhm.
And that's a powerful thought to ponder into, how, if we can stay in that connection with self, with earth, with each other, with however we relate to our spirituality, that it will help us to be healthier in all the ways. And another thought that comes to mind about that exploring into the unknown quality of unschooling is, just where we find ourselves as a species right now on planet Earth. I think we all are very aware that so many of our systems are coming apart at the seams, and are in the process of really dismantling, and we don't really know what's coming next. And actually being in that place of uncertainty and not having a sure idea of what's coming next is actually appropriate for a time where you want to create something new. It's like that idea that gets attributed to Einstein, saying, you can't solve a problem with the same kind of thinking that made the problem in the first place. That's not the exact quote, but that's the concept.
That's the idea.
So, we're at a time right now as a species where we absolutely need to have new thoughts that are not within the box that made the problems in the first place.
Yes.
And so that's where I feel like unschooling is also able to place just an imperative role right now going forward for the species, is for us to be able to, just think new thoughts, think of something, imagine, feel, live into something that is not how we have been doing it prior.
Mhm. And not think that we know how it should be done next too.
Right.
Yeah.
This idea of really being able to listen to, for me, it's really an important part of being able to unschool, is that you can spend a lot of time with the natural world or just with the world, and not kind of cooped up in a
Yes.
box, like a literal brick and mortar
Literal
space,
building. Yes.
tied to a desk, or just, plugged into a screen or whatever, but that you can be out in the world. The whole entire world becomes your learning space. And in that way, then you become much more available to listening to the wisdom that may be speaking to us from other arenas, other than the body of knowledge that we've named, like, this is the stuff that everyone needs to learn. This is the curriculum that our students have to learn to become functioning parts of society. Well, first of all, is society really functioning all that well?
That's a great question. And are our systems creating people that can function in it too? Because actually, I beg to differ that even the systems we have created to create people that function well in the society that they are a part of actually aren't doing that great of a job of that. I mean, mental health is down the tubes for so much of the world's population. Physical health. And we're not going to be able to fix that using the ways exactly like what you just said. We're not going to be able to fix those problems using the methods that created those problems.
Right. Yeah. And there's another thought thread that's in there about, so we're listening to maybe what can emerge that's new, but also I feel like there's this cyclical nature to life, that as we listen for what's new, there's also often, some form of like prior wisdom, maybe forgotten wisdom, even that humans and some humans on the planet still have retained, some especially, indigenous peoples who have retained knowledge from their ancestors, that's related to the earth and our place in the web of life that is really coming back into more mainstream awareness now, and feeding us with this, by reconnecting us to this ancient wisdom, and then supporting us to also then be able to live into what's next and be open to something new. But supported by this wisdom that's always been there, maybe forgotten by many of us, and is now maybe being remembered and being brought back in again. For instance, in the trauma field, working in the somatic field of trauma repair, is this idea that in order to heal the collective woundings that humans are deeply embedded in at this point in our journey, is that we need to reconnect to indigenous ways of knowing. And that's not just specific indigenous groups that, certain peoples living in certain places on the earth. There is that, and that's definitely a part of that, but also that each one of us, drop down into the body and the deeper ways of knowing that are connected to so much more than just our species specific knowing, and that by doing that we will maybe be able to connect to some forms of wisdom that will help our entire species and planet move forward in a healthier way together. So and yeah, when we are following the old pathways, it's like, that's another quote that I think gets attributed to Einstein, is, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and thinking it's going to have a different result.
Yes.
Love
It's like that quote.
Yeah, right. I mean, and then that makes me think of Blake Bowles' book, why are you still sending your kids to school? It's like,
yeah, I mean,
why are you still doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result? Because it's time for something new right now, for sure.
Because that just makes me think of, how many times do we hear parents, when they're getting ready to sign their kids up for school, say, oh, well, yeah, of course I hated school, but it's different now, right? Things have gotten better. Yes and no, man. Yes and no. And mostly no, because certain things have changed. Maybe things have changed on the surface. Maybe, maybe there's teachers that are more aware. Maybe there's, whatever. Lots of things have grown and people are growing. And so, of course, our systems grow too, but not enough. And I makes me think of a video that I have gone back to a few times, that shows and talks about, how all of our technology has changed from 100 years ago to now. And then they show you how much our schools have changed from 100 years ago till now. And it really puts things into perspective. How are we calling each other 100 years ago? Like, we could not see each other through a screen. There was no smartphones. This is new technology. That is how much things have changed in that amount of time. It is crazy how much things have changed. And you look at a classroom from the 1915 or whatever, and a classroom now, they are exactly the same. And there are so many movements talking about, okay, changing the curriculum, diversify our curriculum, decolonize our curriculum. That's great. But maybe we should look at the fact that it's still a curriculum, and how far can that get you? And I think things are ready to move. People are ready for something different. And I'm really, really ready to talk about it. And that's why we're here, that's why we're here.
We have, made this journey together. Elsa's, she said 19 now. And for me, and I think Elsa can speak for herself, but I know that, for us, this has been a really beautiful path. And we really feel like we want other people to know that you can do it. That I know that for many, many people still, it's a very foreign thought to think that you could live life as if school did not exist, and yet you can. I mean, Elsa and I and many of other unschoolers that we know of and know personally have done it and are doing it. And you can really trust that we know how to learn. We know how to, seek out what is most nourishing for ourselves when we are allowed to do that and supported to do that. And that actually is why, I felt motivated to start the True North program, is because I could see how much, it's very challenging to leave a conventional path and not to have the support for what you're doing. We're humans, we're so extremely socially oriented. It's a deep survival need to be connected socially. And so to leave your social structure, social structure of school in this case, to forge out on a path on your own can be just way too much for many people. You just don't have the support to do that. So I thought it was very important for us to create an environment where we could come together with like-minded families and support each other, and just to have that connection and communion, that yes, this is a real path. This is a real thing we're doing. We're doing it together. We together are reflecting back to each other the great value of what we're doing here. And is it perfect? No, like nothing's perfect. Life has its twists and turns and ups and downs. It's just, but conventional schooling is really just a big experiment that's lasted for the last, maybe 150 years, not very long. And it's clearly not succeeding at this point.
Yeah, we're clearly seeing that the experiment is running its course, and it's not going well for the subjects of the experiment. So,
yeah. So sadly, I mean, we know it's not going well when we look at statistics, that younger and younger children are experiencing extreme forms of anxiety and depression, and teenage suicide rates are at an all-time high. And very often when young people are asked, what is stressing them out so much, that it's related to school and the way that school has created an environment that spills over into their whole life,
Mhm.
of competition, constantly being measured, compared, um, that you only are worth what you can produce, all of those kinds of things that
Mhm.
just really, are very demoralizing to the human spirit, and
Mhm.
do not make smarter people, and
No.
certainly do not make healthier people. And so,
Yes,
um,
that
yeah,
is the last thing it does. I mean, all of those things you said are huge, huge factors. And on top of all that, you're not allowed to listen to your body. You're not allowed to, you know, you can't wake up at the time you need after rest. You are expected to study late into the night. Your sleep, I mean, the numbers of my friends that I know that are just working on such minimal sleep, that fall asleep standing up in the shower, that take caffeine pills to get through the day. This is, children, not, I can people, teenagers, but it is completely an unacceptable way to live, to treat your body like that, to treat your life that way. It is so hurtful to all levels of your being, mental, physical, emotional, just, it's overwhelming to me when I think about it. So
yeah,
something needs to shift. And another thing that this makes me think of is, even for those who go through the system and who, fare much better than, some of their peers do. Um, how many times, it's gone to be a stereotype at this point that either post high school, pre-college, or after college, people will take a gap year to find themselves, to figure out what it's like to live in the real world. It's not a campus. You don't get emails telling you the schedule for your entire week and what you're expected to do, and it's on, in this building here. And it's a whole different thing. A lot of things, a lot of times I've heard people say, well, if your kid doesn't go to school, how are they going to know how to function in the world? Well, actually, I would beg to differ. The exact opposite. If your kid is locked up in a building all day, every day for, their whole life, how are they going to know how to function in the world? And it's stressful, and people don't know where to start. How many times have I heard my friends say, why don't we learn things we actually need in school, like taxes, like how to buy a house, like all sorts of things. These things are
yeah,
not talked about. And when kids get out of high school or out of college, they realize, I'm disconnected from my sense of self. I don't know who I am. I don't know what I enjoy doing my time, because I was never allowed to do what I enjoy to do with my own time. And I never had any like free just experiences out in the world, figuring out how things work and how it feels to me. And so I'm going to take a gap year to find myself. And that has just I've just never related to that, because I've never felt like I lost myself. And I mean, that's the essence of why I think unschooling is just such a wonderful path and so needed for people. Because, how sad is it that you get to be 20 years old and you say, I don't even know who the heck I am. That's not right, you know? So
yeah.
I'm excited. I'm excited to talk about this. And
Yeah, I feel
so
like the time is right for change, and that a lot of people, this is a big movement, worldwide now, that people are choosing to unschool and to deschool themselves, to decolonize their thinking, to re-indigenize their approach to life, to embrace this path with their children as a way of life for the whole family, and that
Mhm.
in itself is so healing, right? The
Yes,
fracturing of the
yes.
family has been a big part of what has led to so much unwellness in our societies. So
Mm.
yeah, we Elsa and I, we are definitely passionate about talking about these things, and can go on about it for hours. So I think though that we should wrap this time up. And is there anything more that you wanted to say right now, Elsa, um, about our name, Unschooling Uncharted, as we close?
Well, um, I one other element that I think I didn't say exactly yet is that I feel like right now, at least from, our perspective in our little unschooling enthusiast bubble, there are so many people talking about unschooling and what that means to them, how they relate to the term, whatever, all sorts of different things. And I feel like there are a lot of resources asking and answering questions that are very common for people coming to unschooling for the first time. How do they learn math? What they're never going to read a book in their life. They're not going to, know how to socialize. And those are great questions. And I get very fired up talking about it with people. But for this particular podcast, and part of why I really like this name that we came to, is because I'm really interested in diving into the areas of unschooling that are out of the norm, perhaps, of talking about it. And going deeper with those questions, going further out into, unschooling is just by nature uncharted, but going even into the uncharted territories of the uncharted territory of unschooling. And so that is what I'm excited to do with this. And I think that's 3 times now that I've said I'm excited. So if you don't get it, I'm excited.
Yeah. So in closing, I was thinking about how this relates to a favorite quote from the poet Rilke, and actually I just pulled it up here. So maybe I'll just read this section of the poem. So it says, "Be patient toward all that is unsolved in your heart, and try to love the questions themselves. Like locked rooms and like books that are now written in a very foreign tongue. Do not now seek the answers which cannot be given you because you would not be able to live them. And the point is to live everything. Live the questions now. Perhaps you will then gradually, without noticing it, live along some distant day into the answer." I feel like that, in a way, is a summary of the whole unschooling journey. And
Mhm.
that idea that studying to learn the answers might just be the wrong approach. That
Right.
maybe it's really about living our questions and developing that taste for the unknown and the uncertain and the trust that then comes with that.
Yes. Love it. Love it. Love it.
So thank you, Elsa, for having this conversation with me. I adored talking with you. I adore you. And I look forward to more conversations together to explore the uncharted territories. So until next time, everybody, keep living the questions. We'll see you next time.